I love free software, and I use it often. I also support a lot of the ideas behind it, but I think some free software advocates are sometimes philosophically inconsistent. And this is what I mean. Most serious political and philosophical movements depend on capturing the moral inclinations of its followers. With free software, words like freedom attempt to do that. You're probably familiar with the phrase, software should respect the user's freedom. The free software philosophy builds out this argument based on the presupposition that freedom is something that is good for humans. Now, it may seem obvious to you that freedom is a good thing, but why? Why isn't captivity a good thing? Why is human flourishing the thing people want? Or rather, why isn't it bondage the thing humans need? Who gets to say that freedom is a moral good? Now, I'm not a materialist, but I know some free software advocates are. The materialists depend on there being no spiritual, moral arbiter of right and wrong. The molecules that make up you and me have just morphed into various sorts of organisms ever since the Big Bang or whatever. Perhaps materialists think freedom is good because society at large has decided it's good. Sort of a moral, societal relativism. Even people who aren't materialists have given over ethical decisions to the society at large. If the opinion of society is the moral arbiter of right and wrong, you basically deified society. People can't help but worship some sort of god. And this type of society worship is one of the more narcissistic types because it only takes into account the modern or popular society. It usually ignores all of the smaller or even historical societies. Like, it usually ignores the ancient Inca society as if the ancient Inca society was somehow inferior to it. The man who says we as a society have to decide what's good and bad must also say the cannibalistic society has to decide for themselves what's good and bad. Or if he has the moral audacity to say that cannibalism is bad in general, he would have to say it's bad because the society I come from says it's bad. What does this all have to do with free software? Well, free software depends on freedom being a good thing. So for someone to be a supporter of it, they need to hold some view of the world that says freedom is good. That may work right now for society worshippers, because right now society is of the view that freedom is a good thing. There's a consensus on freedom's goodness. But they'll be in a bit of a pickle when everyone changes their mind. At least if you worship the moon, your morals would stay predictable across the generations. The framework that best explains why freedom is good is the Christian worldview. It says that God made humans free, and it was fallen humans that are responsible for any form of slavish restriction or tyranny. For a Christian, promoting freedom is actually taking a swing at the curse of the fall of mankind. But if there's nothing spiritual and there is no curse, what are you doing supporting freedom? Now, obviously, there were people before Christians who supported the idea of freedom. But I think the reason for that is because the Christian God is the one who made the world. And so people obviously thought about freedom before AD 33. Here's a point that I wholeheartedly agree with Richard Stallman on, though perhaps for different reasons. Freedom is something we want. I don't want my freedoms being restricted. I think that because I believe there's a good God who made humans free. And humans have messed up the world and introduced things like tyranny. The thing I want to point out is the fact that if someone wants to argue for freedom and thinks that a society has to decide for itself what's good and bad, they're going to be completely irrelevant as soon as society changes to a different set of moral imperatives. In that sort of worldview, the arbitrariness that a person settled on had to have been one that had morphed over centuries. It's a fluid moral standard, which, needless to say, is not reliable in the long run. Like, what if society one day woke up and said that it's a moral good for large tech companies to spy on their users so that they could sell their data to advertisers? Would you hop on board? For society worshippers, you would have to be consistent. So to be truly consistent and to advocate for the free software philosophy in a world where free software advocates are the minority, you have to base the argument on some fixed standard of morality. As a Christian, I think freedom is something humans should have. There are also obviously a ton of practical benefits to people having freedom, but pragmatism never carried a culture very far, so it's not a good basis either. Anyway, these are just my thoughts that I wanted to get out there. Let me know in the comments what you think.